Hello, everyone. My name is Akal, and I am a somatic therapist, and I also work with men. I work with men in, helping them connect to, understand, and utilize sexual energy for a variety of purposes, which could be strengthening their immune system, having greater energy levels, clearing up brain fog, and again, also the sort of spiritual progressions as well that you might. So, for those of you who are interested in Taoism or Tantra and things like that. So, this particular video, though, what I'm going to go into is how are we being influenced? I could use a really sort of negative word like manipulated because we kind of are, but I'll just use influence. It's a softer word. So, how are we being influenced by the world around us? First thing we need to look at is ejaculation. What does ejaculation do? So ejaculation basically is this, and I'm going to draw a hypothetical curve with my hand here. So stimulation, so it ends up going up this curve. So the energy reaches a peak. So as we start to reach that peak, when you ejaculate, it drops. The energy drops. Now the issue is this. It doesn't drop to where you started. It drops below, meaning it goes to a lower norm. So it's not like you even recover to where you were at the beginning. You drop below it. So you're drained is what happens. And I can hear a lot of groaning out there in YouTube world. You're like, ejaculation is wonderful, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying it's bad. What I'm saying is that it's a loss of energy, period. And if I'm going to call something bad, it's the lack of choice that goes into it. So we'll use an example. Let me go into how we're being influenced first. And this will actually lead into the example nicely, which is porn. We'll use porn as the first way in which we're being controlled or manipulated or influenced, whatever terms we want to use. So pornography creates obviously heat. So it's a stimulus. We're very stimulated. The energy gets woo, but where's the attention? It's at the eyes. So what is that? Essentially what that is that this is, let me back it up. So in Taoism, the ideal is water up, fire down, meaning we have cool heads and warm bellies. What ends up happening, though, with pornography, fantasy, kink, anything like that, which is kind of falls into the sort of mental realm of things, I would call that intellectual sex. What ends up happening, and again, I'm not saying these things are bad. I'm just saying it's only bad when it's done unconsciously. What ends up happening is we create a top-down arousal. So fire is up, creates heat, creates agitation, anxiety. So for those of you who suffer from anxiety, you may want to pay attention. Pornography, again, will create that. Then a man masturbates, discharges. And I don't know how many of you have ever felt awesome after ejaculating, looking at pornography. I never have. I don't know a single dude who's always like, yeah, that was amazing. I don't know anyone. Shame sometimes comes up for some men, guilt, but most of all, for me anyway, because I don't function through shame and guilt necessarily, but for me, what I always felt was bleh, just blah. I felt a loss. And sometimes that feeling of loss, that feeling would last for me for days, usually 2 to 3 days, and then I'm kind of back to normal-ish. So what's important to remember about all this is that if you apply consciousness here, though, and again, this is, even like a really basic level of awareness here, which is, okay, let's say you masturbate to pornography, you're not ready to give that up. Perfectly fine. It's your choice. Keep in mind that energy flows to where the attention goes. If you're looking at a computer screen and you ejaculate, where's that energy going? To the computer. Do you really want to give your sexual energy to the computer? Just saying. So let's say you did really, really basic technique, which is You're approaching that edge. Let's say on a scale of 1 to 10. Create the scale of 1 to 10 in your mind before you start to self-pleasure. On that scale of 1 to 10, you build to, your 8. And let's say once you get to that 8, you're like, all right, I'm getting close here. You're almost reaching that point of no return. What should you do? You close your eyes. You go into feeling. You go into sensing. Once you go into feeling and sensing, and then let's say you choose to discharge. You choose to release the energy. Then where's it going? Well, of course, some energy is still going out. It's still being discharged, but much less. Some of the energy, because you're in that feeling and sensing space at that point, your eyes are closed, you're feeling and sensing, the energy goes in. And this increases the energy for your vitality. So if you want to feel vital, this is like what I consider an essential first step. So what other ways are we influenced here? We're influenced by religion. So again, I'm not going to tell anyone they shouldn't be religious or this and that. But for a lot of, let's say, the older men who are watching this video, you may actually have a better understanding of this aspect. But because I feel like the religious part of this is not as powerful nowadays as it once was. However, in sort of more orthodox traditions, what you end up seeing is a kind of a shaming around sex. Now, what's that shaming do? Sorry, I'm like adjusting here. So the shaming is, what it does is it represses energy. Shame is about that close to death. There was a book that was written, I think it was in the late 90s, 96, 97, something like that, and it's called Power versus Force. The man who wrote this book, and I don't remember his name, but the man who wrote this book figured out a way, and he was a doctor who managed to measure the amount of energy available for a particular emotional state. And what he did was 0 was dead. There's no life, there's no energy for life. 1,000 on his scale was you've achieved the Tibetan rainbow body. So enlightenment, whatever it may be. Where was shame? Shame was 20, I believe. It was one step up from dead. So meaning there's no energy for life. So if you're applying shame and guilt and you're applying that to your sexual energy, what's it do? It represses it. It causes distortion. Then what happens? Then what ends up happening is that you desire sex. It starts to come up again and again and again and again and again because our subconscious wants us to work through things. It doesn't want us to repress things. So this stuff keeps coming up again and again, and it can be expressed in the mind in many different ways. It could be expressed through, sexual acts that you actually do not truly want to do. It could be expressed in so many different ways. So that's a good example of how certain religious beliefs can mess with that energy. So what's another way? Family, very similar. Some of us grew up in families that were very, very negative around sex and sexuality. We didn't have people to talk to. We didn't have adults to talk to about sex. And so that led to a number of issues in terms of like, how do we approach making love? How do we approach a woman or a man or whatever it is that you're into? Again, if you're walking around with beliefs that were conditioned by your family and you never had anyone you could truly express your sort of desires with and understand sex and sexuality, then what ends up happening is it could create some performance anxiety. So that's a good example of how family might impact us. So now let's talk about the other side of the flip side of this coin, which is, so way back in the day, it was about sexual repression. Now it's about sexual expression. So we had the sexual liberation of the 1960s and everyone was like, woo woo, free for all, right? This happened in the 70s and the 80s to some extent until HIV came around. Sexual liberation is as bad as the repression. Kinda. Energetically speaking, it is. But I understand in some ways it's not. But energetically speaking, as I perceive it, it's as bad. Because if you're on autopilot and you're constantly celebrating sex and you're discharging it all over the place, what happens when you turn 50? What happens when you turn 60, 70? You can't get it up anymore. Again, I have men who come to me who are in their 20s who can't get an erection. And it's not because of any sort of physiological problem. These are men who've gone to doctors about this. All the gearing is perfectly good. Everything's in place, everything is as it should be, but what they're doing is they're discharging all the time. The pressure of horny comes up and they're like, I can't handle that. They get rid of it. So again, constantly draining the energy, constantly numbing ourselves, and it becomes, after a while, we become very disconnected from what horny truly means to us. So again, this idea of sexual expression falls into sort of the cultural norms. Sex sells. Everything around us is constantly pushing sex and sexuality all the time. So again, indulge. That's what at least the culture in the US is all about. It's all about indulging, buying things, eating things. It's this constant pursuit of pleasure. And again, not fundamentally a problem, but if you're doing it unconsciously, it can be. So what is the solution for this? One is the apply to obviously what I've been saying in this video as well as the video before this. Apply choice. Pause. Pause before you do something. Make a choice. I'm going to release or not release. I'm going to look at porn. I'm not going to look at porn. Make a choice. Utilize discipline. The other thing is a concept called inner authority. Inner authority is, what do your instincts tell you? What's your intuition tell you? What's your gut instinct tell you? Because the gut instinct is there to tell you if something is good for your energy or not. So if you're getting signals from your body that are contradictory to your actions, pause. Pay attention to the signals. This is where the energy is. It's not out here. It's in the body. The body is telling you precisely what you need, precisely how you should express that energy. So with that said, hopefully you have some food for thought. I appreciate you watching the video.